Hey guys, what's going on? Laying back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Love at First Sight. Love at First Sight is an American romantic dramedy based on the novel The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight by Jennifer E. Smith, and tells the story of Hadley, a young woman who books a trip to London to attend her father's wedding in the city. She misses her flight and is forced to book a new flight and wait at the airport for it, during which she meets a man named Oliver. The two hit things off quickly and enjoy spending time together during their flight, but end up being separated through the customs process at London. While Hadley is unsure of how or if she will ever see him again, as she soon realizes love has a way of defying the odds. I was ready to hate this movie just based on its title alone. I thought it would be another cheap cliche rom-com like so many others out there, so I was blown away when it not only turned out to be good, but that it's actually one of the best romance movies I've seen in recent years. It's not exactly the most original romance flick out there, but it just nails everything it goes for. The characters and their chemistry, the themes, and the atmosphere are all done so well, and it's an inspiring underdog story of two people overcoming the odds and finding their way back to each other. Haley Lou Richardson was great as the lead character Hadley. She has a lighthearted, humorous personality that makes it easy to become attached to her, and she has her own individual story to follow outside of just pursuing the romance with her love interest, which gives her a lot of depth. Her relationship with her father shows how disenchanted she feels with her life without necessarily making her feel completely hopeless. She realizes that she has to pursue what she really wants in her life in order to be truly happy, which is a simple but endearing sentiment, and I was genuinely invested to see how far she'd go with it. Ben Hardy was fantastic as the male lead Oliver Jones. Similar to Hadley, he also has his own individual arc, this time as a stats student at Yale who makes his way home to London to be with his mother who's dying of cancer. He's immediately sympathetic upon this revelation, and I love seeing him come to terms with his torment. The movie takes advantage of his stats background to great effect. He's obsessed with numbers and always analyzes things in terms of data, so when a surprise comes along, he's taken aback and has no idea how to handle it. It's a relatable feeling that helped me become more attached to his well-being and to see him reunite with Hadley. The chemistry between these two characters is out of this world. In fact, it's probably the best I've seen in a romance movie, at least for this year. It's rare that a movie is able to catch that sort of spark, let alone the idea of love at first sight, but this movie achieves it right from the beginning with almost no effort. There's an adorable awkwardness between the two where they know they like each other, but neither one wants to admit it yet, and they're still not sure what exactly is happening to them. It perfectly captures that feeling of butterflies in one's stomach to the point that I felt like I was right there along with the characters. Whether Oliver holds Hadley's hand during takeoff to ease her anxiety, or she sleeps next to him mid-flight, or the two just stare at each other in silence, these two fall in love fast and hard, and it all feels completely believable in execution. Everything in their body language says more about their relationship than any amount of dialogue could. That's not a dig against the dialogue though, because the writing is just as good in this area too. The dialogue between them is both witty and thoughtful, as they exchange jokes to each other about how their first date is going, while also emphasizing with each other about their individual circumstances, and the way the movie brings these two together in this regard is just plain heartwarming. The movie knows when to have playful banter between them, and when to rein things back to focus on the drama. I do think this movie is more of a drama, especially as events proceed later on, but in general the movie does a good job at balancing its tone for the right moments. I was pleased with how well the movie was able to basically tell two stories and balance effectively between them. Hadley and Oliver's estranged relationships with their parents are given equal focus while exploring different things, so their own stories help them relate to each other better without feeling like they're copying each other. All of this is when the two are together though, as the rest of the movie is dedicated to the two trying to reconnect with each other. The separation between them is just as riveting as their initial encounter, because it's filled to the brim with romantic tension. Because these two are so good together, I was devastated by the level of pure happenstance that drifted them apart. The two only have a few scant clues to go on in order to find each other in the big city of London, and while the search itself doesn't take long, the build-up and payoff for it is absolutely amazing. It also helps that the movie's aesthetic presentation ramps up the romantic atmosphere for the story too. The vast cityscape visuals of London excellently conveys the needle in a haystack concept of the story, while the light musical breaks in between scenes add a more relaxing tone to the story while still emphasizing the tension of the two search for each other. I don't want to spoil too much about what happens between them toward the end, because part of the fun of this movie is wondering whether or not they'll end up finding each other. I will say though, that I appreciated how their love story doesn't exactly go where one expects, as the two still have conflict between them, and I enjoyed seeing how their parents tied into this aspect. Throughout the movie, there are narrations provided by this sort of guardian angel figure played by Jamila Jamil, who also interacts with both lead characters throughout the story. The way she was utilized is probably the only thing I could possibly complain about, and even then it's only a minor nitpick. I like how some of her narrations add context to the characters' motivations and backgrounds, and the way she interacts with them in the real world is amusing, but most of the time her scenes just feel like filler. I just felt her character honed way too much into random statistics that didn't add much to the story. This being said, it did make me think of all the little decisions one makes when living life, with how doing or not doing something leads down a certain path, and it's up to that person to make what they will of it. And it's this theme that makes the movie that much more inspiring to watch. Honestly, I did not expect this movie to be as deep as it was in terms of thematic content. It has so much to unpack, from how fate both brings people together and drifts them apart. It is sad in some respects, but it mostly serves as a celebration of life and making changes for the better, which ties in beautifully with what both Hadley and Oliver go through. This is the kind of love story that I wish was made more often. Unlike similar movies in the genre that are more formulaic in approach, this one feels raw and realistic with how high the highs are as well as how low the lows are. And it's summarized by probably the truest line of dialogue in the movie: love is a lot of work. It made me think of my own relationship with my girlfriend who lives in Nicaragua. Every decision I made led me to her, which has been the greatest blessing I've ever had. And even then, we still have a lot of work to do in maintaining our relationship. So I appreciated how honest this movie's approach was to romance and relationships. By the way, Hazel, te amo. It's worth noting that this movie doesn't really break new ground per se. At the end of the day, it's still a love story between two characters with their fair share of good and bad moments. It's the underdog element they share with each other that makes their story so unique and worthwhile to experience. Overall, Love at First Sight is an amazing romance flick that isn't novel, but is very, very, very good at what it does, as an optimistic observation of what happens when people take a chance on love. If you enjoy romance flicks that are both funny and tear-jerking and will pull at your heartstrings, you definitely have to check this one out. It is so good. I am so glad this movie surprised me as much as it did. It's deceptive at how it appears at first glance with a generic title and premise, but over time, it blossoms into a phenomenal story of love, bolstered by excellent acting and chemistry, romantic tension, and thematic depth. It is so good, you may end up falling in love with it at first sight too. What did you think about this movie? Did you love it as much as I did, or did you find some flaws with it instead? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Love at First Sight. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the American family action comedy Spy Kids Armageddon. Bye bye!